off!
Hi, okay, so this week we're starting with Parsha Toldot. Okay, so just like last week, this Parsha has 3 different sections, okay? So the first section is the birth and development of the 2 sons of Yitzchak, Yaakov and Esav. Okay, so Rivka is first barren, and then she and Yitzchak daven. Mostly Yitzchak is the one who davens. She becomes pregnant. The twins struggle in her womb, right? I've heard this story. Eventually they're born. Esav is born all red, hairy, some sort of maid aspect to him. Yaakov is born afterwards, and he's like grabbing onto the heel of his brother, okay? And then we go into the story afterwards of how he ends up selling the birthright. Esav sells the birthright for a pot of soup to Yaakov. Although technically, according to some of the Meforshim, it wasn't actually for a pot of soup. The soup was just to sweeten the deal. He sold it for money. So that is the first section of our Parsha. The second section of our Parsha is when Yitzchak goes down to Gerar. He goes down to the land of the Plishtim. And he digs some wells. There's a famine. Like, his wife ends up in Avimelech's house. There's a little bit of fighting. It's an interesting story. And then the next section is also the really famous part, which is when we talk about stealing the blessing. Stealing the blessing. Did he steal the blessing? Was it rightfully his blessing? Yaakov covers his hands with the skin of a goat in order to trick his father to think he's Esav, to get this bracha, to get this blessing. And then Esav comes and cries. He's like, where's my bracha? Right? This Parsha is really interesting because I feel like whenever we hear about this Parsha, we hear about the beginning or we hear about the end. It's always about the brothers. But what's really interesting is how the Parsha is divided, because the first section of the Parsha, that whole story with the barrenness and the pregnancy and the brothers and the birthright, is less than 1 aliyah. And the end story, where we talk about the stealing of the blessing, is only about 2 aliyot in total. It's the beginning in the middle of the 5th, and then the 6th and the 7th. And the majority of this Parsha is actually talking about that time that Yitzchak's down with the Plishtim. Which is really interesting, because it seems like such a blasé sort of, like, okay, so he's at the Plishtim. It doesn't seem like that exciting compared to, like, the high drama of the sale of the birthright and the, like, amazing, you could make a stage play out of the sections of Toldot, the bookends that everybody talks about. Then why does the Torah give so much time talking about the middle section? The middle section where the brothers don't even appear. We don't even hear about Yaakov or Esav in the entire time. One can assume that they probably were there. I mean, they might have been in and out, but like they probably were living with their families. So the Torah doesn't mention them at all. It only mentions Yitzchak. So what I want to focus on today is that vast middle section, and what happens there, and what we can learn from there. Okay, so first I want to break down exactly what happens in that middle section. So you're going to bear with me for a little bit of history. Okay, the whole thing starts out with a famine. Okay, there's a famine in the land of Israel. Yitzchak needs to leave. So Yitzchak's plan is to go where because of the famine? Egypt, okay, just like his dad. His dad, when there was a famine in the land, goes down to Egypt. So he starts heading to the south of Israel. He starts heading out of Israel. He heads to Gerar, and he's going to head down to Egypt, and Hashem tells him to stop. And he says, you can't leave Israel. Now, does anybody know why he can't leave Israel?
Because of the Akedah.
Right, okay, so there's 2 reasons. One, he's born in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so it's not so simple to leave Eretz Yisrael if you're born here. For example, I have Hasidic neighbors who were both born in Israel, who've never left Israel. Because it's not so simple to just pick up and leave, like, the Holy Land if you always have been here. And the second thing is what you said, Barbara, is that he was in a different spiritual category because he had been an olatamim. He'd been like this offering, this pure offering on the altar. So because he'd achieved that status, he wasn't allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. Because basically when you have a certain kind of offering, they can't leave the area of the Beis HaMikdash. They just can't. They are not allowed to be in non-holy territory. So Yitzchak, because he was in this category, couldn't leave Eretz Yisrael. He couldn't leave the Holy Land. Okay, fine. So then they go down to Gerar, and Yitzchak says, this is Rivka, my sister. Sounds really familiar. Mm-hmm. And they take her into the house of Avimelech, and then, how do they get found out?
He sees them flirting.
He sees them more than flirting.
Whatever.
According to Rashi, he sees them together.
That's gross.
Well, they weren't married. So he sees them together, and Avimelech says, like, how could you do this? You almost made a sin. What if somebody had taken her? What if somebody had married her? Get out. So Yitzchak leaves. And Yitzchak does something interesting. He farms. He goes and plants. And he's blessed 100 times over with his farming. Like, every seed yields 100 times what they thought, which is called Mea Sharim, like the neighborhood, which is named from this pasuk in the Torah, that one plant could produce 100 things, which is, if you've ever seen the families in Mea Sharim, that bracha is coming pretty true. One family, hundreds of descendants. Okay, so then the Plishtim get jealous of how well he's going, and they go fill up his father's wells. His father had dug wells, and they go fill him up with dirt. Mm-hmm. And then they tell him to get out. They're like, go away. Okay? So he moves. He moves to a different place. He moves to Nachal. And then he either goes back to the wells, or the wells are there or something, and he reopens these wells that his dad dug. Okay? Then he digs his own wells. Then he moves to Beersheba. Avimelech shows up, and Avimelech makes a treaty with him, and then they find one more well. I told you, everybody skips this part of the Parsha. Because it's mostly people wandering around, digging wells, having wells get spogged, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not, what do I care so much about the wells? I mean, interesting wells, but what do I care? So what's with the wells? The Rambam brings us an important concept back in Parshas Lech Lecha that we've got to use here. Whenever you see something in the Torah that seems mundane, uninteresting, and really not worth talking about, you have to dig deeper. Specifically, well digging, or wars, or strange things where they name places, or the Torah's like, and then he went to here, and then he did this. The Ramban tells us that those are all ma'aseh avot siman labanim. The deeds of the fathers are a sign unto the children. All of those random actions that we think, like, why is this in the Torah? Why are we wasting breath on this? Are really very deep, hidden explanations of what's going to happen in the future to the children, to the descendants of the people in the story. Okay? So, in Parshas Toldot, what we see with these wells, okay, is he gets to these wells, okay, and he digs 4 of his own. First, he takes his dad's wells that got stopped up with the dust, and he opens them up, and he calls them by the name that his father gave them. Okay, so set 1 of wells, dad's wells. Avraham Avinu's wells that got stopped up by the Plishtim, okay, with dirt. Yitzchak clears out the dirt and names the wells according to the names his father gave. 1 set of wells. Second set of wells are the wells that he digs and he names. Okay? So there's Esek, Sitna, Rehovot, and Shiva. I know the names of 4 wells in Parshas Toldot. And the reason that I care about the names of those 4 wells, which is a really random thing to care about, is 2 reasons. 1, the Ramban says, and also the Kli Yakar, and also one of my husband's ancestors, says, no, for real, it was super cool. I was like, oh, they're just happening to be referencing one of my husband's ancestors. So he says that those first 3 wells, here's what happens. Yitzchak digs a well, and the Plishtim get mad and say, that's actually our water. And so they fight about it. So he names the well basically the equivalent of fought about it. Okay, he names it Esek, okay, which means contention. And then he moves a little bit, and then he goes digs a separate well, and then they fight about it, and he calls it Sitna, which means accusation and slander. And then he digs a 3rd well, and they leave him alone, so he calls it Rehovot, which means, like, expansiveness. So what the Ramban and my husband's ancestor in the Kli Yakar says is that each one of those wells is symbolic of one of the Betei Mikdash, one of the temples. The first temple, why was it destroyed? Because there was fighting between the shepherds of Israel. There were two kingdoms, there were two groups of people, and they were constantly infighting. There was contention, and there was strife, and there was fought about it, and it gets destroyed. The second well is symbolic of the second Beit HaMikdash, which was destroyed because of accusations, because of slander, aka Lashon Hara, which is what sitna means, and also because of sitna sounds like sinat. Sitna sounds like sinat, which means hatred. And the second Beit HaMikdash we know was destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And the third well, Rehovot, is the symbol of the third Beit HaMikdash. Expansiveness, which will never be destroyed, which will have no contention, which will have no strife, which will be accepted by us and also by all of the Goyim. All of the non-Jews will also accept our rule in the third Beit HaMikdash. Rehovot, and it will expand out to the entire world. Come on, that's cool. That's cool. Okay, the second reason why I care what these wells are called.
Didn't you say there were 4 wells?
There were 4 wells, good. So the first 3, he digs all together, and then he goes somewhere else and digs the 4th well. But the Baal HaTurim says all 4 wells are related, and each one of the wells is connected to one of the exiles.
So what's the 4th one?
The 4th one is called Shiva.
Sorry, were you getting there?
No, I'll get there.
Okay.
But I know, it's exciting. You need popcorn. Okay, so the first well, this is the thing. The first well, he digs, and it's contested, and whatever, and it's hard, and it's struggling, it's well. But at the end, the water comes, and they move on. You see, water is symbolic in the Torah of Torah. Good. Okay. So even though you have to dig through the dirt, you'll still find water. Even though we have to go through the exile, we'll still have the Torah. We'll still be connected to the source. So the first well symbolizes the first exile, which is in Babel. He goes through this whole explanation of how he knows this, which involves a lot of wordplay in Hebrew, which I'm going to skip, but just go with me. It makes sense. Okay. First well is Babel. Second well is second exile.
Persian.
Good. Persian. Parsu Madai. Third exile. Greek, which is Yavan. And 4th exile. Roman, which is Edom. Very good.
I pay attention in class, guys.
Good job.
I sure do.
Okay, so this is really nice, and this is really cute. And I think, like, it's nice whenever they, like, pull back the curtain a little bit, and you can be like, ooh, and this symbolizes this, and this symbolizes this, and this symbolizes this. But besides being, you know, like, wow, the Torah is much deeper than I thought, and oh my gosh, there's so much meaning to everything, it's a little hard to have a take-home meaning from those. Except, like, Torah is awesome. But a take-home meaning, something that you can actually apply in the next week, it's a little hard with those. So I found this deeper meaning, which I think is amazing and totally revolutionary. So here we go. It's based on a Rabbeinu Bachaya, okay? So what is Yitzchak's whole going down to Gerar, Rivka, the wells, Avimelech? What's it remind you of, Barbara?
Abraham and Sarah.
Abraham did the exact same thing. Abraham goes to Gerar. Abraham says Sarah is his sister. Abraham digs wells. Abraham makes a pact with Abimelech. Same exact thing. It's in Parshas Vayera in chapters 20 and in chapter 21. Okay, in between the destruction of Sodom and Yitzchak's birth, and then after they send away Ishmael. Okay, he goes to Gerar twice. Okay, so, and that's how, by the way, it refers to Abraham's wells. Well, how the heck did those wells get there? Well, because we know he was there 6 chapters ago. Okay, so why do we need Yitzchak to do the exact same thing that his dad did? What's the point? Why does he have to schlep down to Gerar and do the exact same thing his dad does. And why does the Torah have to tell us about it? I mean, besides, like, they could have really, in the Torah, if they wanted to have that whole fun Devar Torah about, like, the 3 Beit HaMikdash and the 4 Galiot, they could have been like, and Yitzchak at one point dug 3 wells, and actually 4, and they were symbolic of this. So, 3 Pasukim, we get it done. Why do we have to go through this long, drawn-out story about Yitzchak doing the exact same thing his dad did? Okay, so Rabbeinu Bachaya says, Mima shehaTorah hodi'a zeh, why is the Torah coming to tell us this? Kanireh shenachshov lo lezechut, because it was thought of as a merit that he did this. Shelo yishaneh adam miderech avotav, because a man shouldn't differ from the ways of his fathers. Avraham Avinu had the power of innovation. He was called Avraham the Ivri, right? So Rashi tells me that Avraham Avinu was here and the entire world was here. And he crossed over. He stood on the opposite side of the world. Avraham Avinu could innovate. Avraham Avinu could do something new, do something revolutionary. And Yitzchak Avinu, his strength was continuation. His dad started a path, and Yitzchak could keep going. And that is why the Torah takes all of this time to tell us he went in the exact same path as his dad. And he did the exact same things as his father, in the exact same way his father would have done things. In fact, it's really interesting because whenever Hashem speaks to Yitzchak in this Parsha, he almost exclusively talks to him about his dad. And my servant Avraham did this and that and the other, and I'm going to bless you because Avraham listened to my mitzvahs, and I'm going to bless you because of Avraham. He's all about following in Avram's footsteps. He gets to Avram's wells, who got all covered up. He clears out the dirt, and he calls them the same names as his dad. He's just following the path his dad made. Okay. Like, he does this so much so that when he sees a famine, what's his first thought?
Go to Egypt.
Go to Egypt. Why?
Because
Daddy did it. And Hashem has to be like, no. You don't go to Mitzrayim. Okay? He keeps the names of the wells exactly the same as what his dad said. He keeps the exact same covenant with Avimelech. Avimelech shows up and is like, let's make a covenant. And Yitzchak's like, you made a covenant with my dad. And he's like, okay, but let's renew it. Makes the exact same covenant with Avimelech. In the exact same place. Okay? His interactions with Hashem are all about his dad, all about, like, your father did this, and your father did that, and this, and I'm going to do for you just because of your father. And this is the amazing thing that the Gra says, okay? The Gaon from Vilna. You can see that he has the power of continuation because of our 3 forefathers. He's the only one who doesn't change his name. Avram becomes Avraham, and Yaakov becomes Israel. They change. And Yitzchak starts out Yitzchak and remains Yitzchak. He's the only one of the forefathers who doesn't have a name change.
Why?
Because his power was not the ability to do something new. His power is the ability to stay on the same path.
Isn't that a lack of growth?
Maybe. We're going to see how it isn't a lack of growth because there's an aspect of continuation that is growth. It's just a different kind. Why did Avraham get a different name? Because Avraham came from, like, whoa, buddy, right? He came from, like, idol worshippers, heathens, crazy people. And then he totally changes everything. And he makes a ton of converts, right? Do we remember this, Rashi, where they make souls in Haran? They got all of these converts. And he's, like, out there telling everyone, one God, one God, one God. Like, so he gets a name change, right? He goes from Avram to Avraham, father of the nations, right? And then Yaakov is named after grabbing onto the heel. When does he get his name change?
When he fights the angel.
Whose angel?
Esav's.
Great. So he fights against the angel, and he struggles, and he struggles, and he struggles, and he struggles, and he gets the name Israel, which means one who struggles with God. Right? This is this other powerful name of change and excitement and whatever, and Yitzchak doesn't change. Yitzchak doesn't change. So Rabbeinu Bechaya brings this amazing, crazy, cool idea about these wells. So let's go back to his dad's wells. Okay? What was wrong with the wells?
They were full of dirt.
Who put the dirt in there? The Plishtim. Yeah, okay? Abraham had dug a bunch of wells. Dug. Here's the well. The Plishtim got mad, and they filled them up with dirt. Okay, so they're all topped up. So what does Yitzchak come and do?
Digs them out.
Digs them out. Cool. And then he says, and this well my dad called Well A. So I shall call this well A. So what Rabbeinu Bechaya says is, this is all a parable. This is all metaphoric. And what we can actually understand is, and hold on to your hats, the wells were really, remember how I just said about 3 minutes ago that Avraham Avinu went out there and said there's God in the world and everything, and he made a bunch of converts? You ever wonder what happened to those people? Where'd they go? Abraham mitgayer et ha'anashim, Sarah mitgayer et ha'anashim. Where are those people? Where are these converts? So Rabbeinu Bechaya says the wells that Yitzchak was dealing with weren't really wells. They were the students of Avraham Avinu. They were the converts of Avraham Avinu. So a convert is like this. The student is like this. They were the wells. Digging them, what Avraham Avinu did the first time, digging out those wells, is opening up the heart to Emunah and to the knowledge of God. Digging through all the dirt till the water comes. So what does it mean that they got blocked up? They lost the connection. They lost the Emunah. They lost the knowledge of God, and the water got stopped up. And who blocked them up? They blocked themselves. So what does Yitzchak come and do? He finds these students of Avraham Avinu who he had dug out, and brought out the water, and brought out the Emunah, and brought out the knowledge of God. And he starts clearing out all the dirt that they've stuck in there so that they can get back to the water again. Because what Rabbeinu Bechaya says is for someone to connect to the Emunah and to the knowledge of God is as easy as filling up a well with water. Dig at it long enough, you'll hit water. The problem is keeping the well clean. The well can get stopped up really easily. Yitzchak Avinu, oh wait, I want to give you this other thing. So why is it important that he clears out? He restores their connection. And then why do we care that he says, my father called this well A, I will call this well A? Because what happens when someone converts is we give them a new name to signify their connection with God. They'd lost their name. They'd lost their connection. They'd lost their Emunah. Yitzchak cleans them out and says, remember, you're called this. Yitzchak Avinu was the ultimate FFB from birth. Grew up in a house of Torah. Grew up in this situation with like dad's out there doing kiruv, mom's doing kiruv, got the whole house open, I'm FFB, where's my excitement? Like just keep doing what dad does. But he had staying power. He had the ability to keep going on the path that his father put out. And the reason that we need that is because as much as we need, as the children of Avraham Avinu, the ability to stand on the other side of the river and be like, there's a God, and be completely revolutionary and like be able to find Hashem and have a Munah and all that sort of thing, and have these giant experiences, which is mostly exclusively the stories you read about in Mishpacha magazine and see on YouTube. These like, I was in an ashram in India and the Dalai Lama told me to go be a Jew, or I was intermarried and I lived in like Appalachia and now I'm a Jew, or like I was an African prince and now I'm a Jew. Like, we love these stories of like, whoa. But you know what's an amazing story? Sticking with it. Sticking with it. Because after that inspiration and after all that water comes spurting up and all of that stuff, it's real easy for the dust to get back in there. It's real easy to get lost. It's real easy to not have the strength to keep going. And that's why we need Yitzchak Avinu. Because we need someone who will walk in the exact same path of his father and keep growing, but on that path, without the whole revelation experience, without the whole dramatic story that we all love. One of my favorite people in the world once said, like, people like ask me, like, how did you become frum? And he's like, well, I went to yeshiva, and now I'm frum. They're like, but don't you have like a story where you like saw the light? And he was like, I went to yeshiva, and now I'm frum. We love these inspiring stories, but part of the most inspiring thing, and it's enough for one of our Avos to have this as his main characteristic, is the ability to just keep going. Lo lihitchadesh, lehamshich, just to keep going. Okay? Ma'aseh avot siman lebanim. If Yitzchak can do it, Ma'aseh avot, the deeds of the father, are assigned to the sons, are assigned to the children. We have that genetic DNA within us as well. I've always said, like, I have a really interesting life story. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I just think you're really holy and I like really respect you. And I'm like, I really respect somebody who grew up in Borough Park and is still from. I really respect somebody who totally flipped out at Neve and 5 years later is still on path. I respect somebody who got makareved really hard and it was not an easy transition into the frum world, but they still stayed in love with Hashem. They still kept going. So, how do we bring this home? 3 points. Number 1, Rav Destler says, when we're talking about Yitzchak Avinu, his main midah was, Avraham was chesed, Yitzchak was gevura. Okay, gevura comes from yira. Gevura comes from fear, awe. If you want to be able to keep going, work on your gevura and work on your fear of heaven. Work on your awe of God. Work on your awe of the Almighty who is constantly around you, who gave you this amazing Torah, who put you on the path you're on. Awe will help you keep going. Gevura is that inner strength of not being all about out, but being all about in, feeding yourself, working on yourself. Check your well, check your dirt levels. Are you clean? Are we still getting water from the source, or is it getting a little bit muddy? Work on your gevura, work on your yira. The next tip is be a well, not a pitcher. I love this. This is one of my favorite mashalom. Okay, there's 2 ways to give. Everybody needs water, aka Torah. Okay, great. There's 2 ways to give. You can be a pitcher or a cup. You only have as much as you have. And once you give it, it's gone. And there's nothing left for you. You can give and you can give and you can pour and you can pour, but you're only going to have so much. Because you took your Torah and you put it right here, and here's all my Torah, and I have it all safe and it's all together, but if I give you any, I'm going to end up running out. You can be a pitcher, or you can be a well. If you're connected to the source, you never run out of water. You can give, and you can give, and you can give, but you're connected to the source, so you're just going to keep getting refilled. But if you disconnect from the source, you can only give so much. And the third thing is, what was Yitzchak's ability? It was ability for him to continue going, but to also see when others have gotten lost. And to care about other people who are blocked up. And to start helping them dig that dirt away. We're really, really worried about, like, digging those primary wells in our world. Like, oh my gosh, we gotta go to, like, Alaska and find, like, the one Jewish Jew there and make sure that, like, he can find Hashem. Okay, yes, we definitely need those people in Alaska. Go Ner LaElif, go Chabad, go. Like, go YouTube videos, go find those Jews. But guess what? We need to put just as much effort into the wells we've already dug. We need to put just as much effort into the wells we've already dug. If they connected with Hashem, and if they connected with Amunah, and they connected with the creator of the world, we have to make sure that they're staying healthy and clean. Or if they're one of those great people who were born in Borough Park, or Golders Green, or Hempstead, Hendon, okay, great. Like, if you were one of those people who was born in Baltimore, Chicago, etc., you were born in a nice frum family, like, that doesn't exempt us from worrying about you as well. That doesn't exempt us from taking care of you as well. All of these different wells of Torah, we need all of the wells. Not just to go dig, we also need to keep the wells we've got going healthy. And it's not just an obligation of, like, oh, those dedicated kiruv professionals. It's a dedication of all of Am Yisrael. All of Am Yisrael. And Bezrat Hashem, one of these days, guess what? We're going to have some FFB wells in our family. Little FFB wells. You're going to have little ones that you have to take care of. And you can't give unless you're connected to the source. You can't stay on path unless you've worked on your Gevura and your Yira and your connection with Hashem. And you can't give unless your waters are cleared. And that is worth taking a majority of a Parsha to tell you. That it is strong and it is powerful and it is beautiful just to keep going. It's huge just to keep going. We have a whole Father to just tell us, keep going. Keep going. That's holy work. Keep going. Hashem is happy. Keep going. Ele Toldos Yitzchak. Why does it have to tell us twice that Yitzchak's the son of Avraham there? Because that's what he was about. Being the son of his father. Continuing his father's work. I bless you all that this coming week that you have the ability to just have fresh, clean water coming out of your wells, that you connect to the source of everything, the source of life, the source of joy, the source of Torah, to Hashem Yitbarach, that if you see a friend with a little dirt, help them clear out. Bless you. Have a great Shabbos. Take care.
Amen.
Thank you.
We think so.
Mm-hmm.
The moment when I can edit. Thank God.